Hello, students. I'm going to do this reading. I'm going to read it out loud and give you some context. All right, Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. Look around you. Do you see classmates of different races and ethnicities around you? Most likely your answer is yes, and a lot of the reason you see this is thanks to the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case of 1954. This court case is acknowledged as one of the greatest Supreme Court decisions of the 20th century. This decision unanimously, that means that everyone agreed, all the justices ruled the same way, held that racial segregation of children in public schools violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Now, remember, the Equal Protection Clause says that no matter race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, whatever, if you're a citizen of the United States, all right, the law applies the same regardless of race. All right, and this is part of the 14th Amendment, which was passed at the end of the Civil War, all right, that says that if you are born in the United States or a naturalized citizen, or you're naturalized and you are a citizen. The decision put the Constitution on the side of racial equality and propelled the American Civil Rights Movement. Prior to 1954, a large amount of the United States had racially segregated schools. These were made legal by the Supreme Court case of Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. This case held that segregated public facilities are things like libraries, schools, government buildings, buses, water fountains, all of those kind of things were constitutional as long as the black and white facilities were equal to one another. During the early 1950s, NAACP lawyers, which stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People lawyers, brought class action lawsuits on behalf of black school children and their families in Kansas, South Carolina, Virginia, and Delaware. A class action lawsuit is when a whole bunch of people, right, get together and sue someone. And basically the idea is there are power in numbers. They sought court orders to allow school districts to let black students attend white public schools. One of the class action suits was Brown versus Board of Education that was filed against the Topeka, Kansas School Board by the representative plaintiff Oliver Brown. A plaintiff is an individual who is initiating some type of legal action. On the other side of that is the defendant. So the defendant in this case would be the Board of Education. He was the parent of one of the children denied access to Topeka's white schools. Brown claimed Topeka's racial segregation violated the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause because the black and white schools in the city were not equal and could never be. The federal district court dismissed Brown's claims, ruling that the segregated public schools were substantially equal enough to be constitutional under the Plessy Doctrine. This ruling appealed to the Supreme Court. All right. Now remember that the federal Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. is the most powerful court in the country. So it's the big dog. All right. If a decision is made in that federal Supreme Court, all right, all other courts, thousands of courts within the country have to follow that decision. So this is a big deal. When court cases go all the way up there, it's a big deal. Who met and reviewed all the school segregation actions together. Thurgood Marshall was the chief counsel for the plaintiffs. Thurgood Marshall is the first African-American justice in the Supreme Court. He was appointed by Lyndon B. Johnson in 1967. That's what he looks like. There's a great movie about him and his career. You can go to biography.com to find out more. The Supreme Court was led by Chief Justice Earl Warren. This is Earl Warren. He was the governor of California. He was also a Chief Justice on this case, Miranda versus Arizona, which is also a huge case that we talk about. It has to do with when you're arrested for a crime. They basically, when they say, you have the right to remain silent, anything you can. And will say, I don't know all the words, but basically you can't incriminate yourself if you are arrested. So that was another really important case that he was a part of. They ruled unanimously that racial segregation of children in public schools violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. This amendment stated that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction. Your jurisdiction is the area that the court rules over. So, for instance, if I got a speeding ticket in Newton, right, I would have to go to the Newton Town Court to handle it because that's their jurisdiction, their area. So juris, this word like jury, legal, okay, that's that connection. The legal jurisdiction, the equal protection of the laws. They noted that public education in the 20th century had become an essential component of a citizen's public life and formed the basis of a democratic citizen, normal socialization, and professional training. Therefore, any child who was denied a good education was unlikely to succeed in life. They felt a state should provide equal education to both blacks and whites. Desegregation in public schools occurred slowly and with a lot of opposition and often took help of the federal courts. Eventually, those schools were integrated and whites and blacks attended schools together.